now that almost all of the head coaching positions have been filled, we are going to look over all 6 of the officially named new head coaches and kind of give a little bit of insight into them, the staff that they've put together, and our takes on whether or not they were good hires. So I will let you kick things off with your team's former offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, who was signed by the Bears.
Yep. Biggest name in the coaching carousel this year. Ben Johnson did go in division to a rival with the Bears. Got a lot of flack for that, but it is what it is. It was the best situation to get, I would pretty easily say. And he brings with him Antoine Randall, so former Lions wide receiver coach, is going to go over there, be wide receiver coach and assistant head coach under him. And I think, Ben Johnson really talked a lot during his process getting the people under him. He did say I want someone that I know that I can trust to get these cards, get this game plan in place early in the week, because early in the week as the head coach I got to be focused on other things. So I think bringing Antoine Randall over is definitely that's his role. He's going to be the guy who preps things early in the week, so Ben Johnson can trust him with the offense. They know each other, they're familiar. And then on the offensive coordinator side, he goes ahead, he gets Declan Doyle, the tight ends coach for the Broncos, which, a former Sean Payton-led team's tight end coach. It's almost like Ben Johnson might be familiar with one of those in the form of Dan Campbell, his former head coach. So I think it's certainly a strong correlation of okay, he's worked with Dan and he's worked with a lot of people under a Sean Payton tree. So he's kind of trying to expand that Sean Payton tree, get some names in there because he's familiar with those offense terminology and stuff like that. So he gets Declan Doyle, going to be similar terminology. They're going to be able to work together for that game plan. And then also Ben Johnson's still going to be calling plays. So it's not a huge worry of this is a tight ends coach, you're going to give him play calling duties. No, it's going to be in Ben Johnson's hands. He's just another guy to help out, get those early game plans in. And then another Sean Payton guy coming in. He's getting Dennis Allen as the defensive coordinator. Not as good as a head coach. I don't think was a great leader of men, but as a defensive coordinator, Dennis Allen under Sean Payton did have a very dominant defense, very good defense for many years. So I think he's kind of trying to tap into that, talent, that ability to structure a defense effectively. And I think, he's made some decent hires. Dennis Allen is the one that I would be most iffy on, just due to what we've seen most recently of Dennis Allen. But it very well could pan out and work out well for the Bears for the next couple of years.
Yeah, Declan, the offensive coordinator, Declan Doyle, he's the youngest coordinator ever. So
yeah,
I think that may also be Ben Johnson kind of trying to find the second him, not just trying to find a Dan Campbell, but trying to find a guy that's like him, a younger kind of crazy mind that can do cool things. And I also like the Bears tight end room quite a bit. Cole Kmet and Gerald Everett, if he's still there. Both of those I think can be very interestingly utilized as talented pass catchers plus. But we'll get on to my New England Patriots, who signed Mike Vrabel as their head coach just a week into the head coaching search. And I kind of already made an entire video breaking down Vrabel and the events that led up to his hiring. And I said that I liked him as a candidate more than Gerard Mayo. And so I think that it was the right move to move off of Mayo and get Vrabel. I also really like the hires he's made at offensive and defensive coordinator. Josh McDaniels is returning to the Patriots as offensive coordinator, and Terrell Williams is the defensive coordinator. He was on the Lions last year and was with Vrabel in Tennessee as the defensive line coach before that. And so Vrabel is not an offensive-minded head coach. He's not an offensive guru. He's a leader of men and a defensive guy. So he is going to be able to work directly with Williams and implement the defense that he wants to get going. And I think it was pretty effective in Tennessee. They always played better than they actually were. And so I'm excited to see that in New England. And then Josh McDaniels, there were hotter names to be offensive coordinator, but ultimately I think he is the only correct option with the type of staff we are building. Because when you get a guy like Vrabel to be your head coach, he's not going anywhere. No head coach really is. but he's also the safe option. So you know that he's, unless something really crazy happens and he's just completely lost his mind, he's probably going to be there for like 5 to 10 years minimum, as long as he can do what he did in Tennessee, which is take a really bad team and make them overperform and make the playoffs most years. So if he can do that, he will be the Patriots head coach for a while. And when you have a longtime head coach that is not an offensive guru, you need an offensive mind at coordinator that will not leave you. Because if you get a guy like a Ben Johnson, a young up and comer who's got some crazy ideas, flashy plays, really good, leads a really efficient offense, he's going to get a head coaching job. We saw it happen to the Lions. With Josh McDaniels, he's had 2 different head coaching stints and has sucked in both of them. But he's always come back to the Patriots as an offensive coordinator and has rocked it as a coordinator. So
Yeah.
I think he is the epitome of great football mind, horrific leader of men. And Vrabel fits that perfectly as a great leader of men, while maybe not as great of an offensive mind. So I really, really like the McDaniels hire as offensive coordinator. He had Mac Jones in the Pro Bowl. Drake May is in the Pro Bowl, guys. Can we get a whoop whoop for 4 people saying, no, I don't want to be in the Pro Bowl?
Right. You got freaking Russ as the starter. I'm pretty sure it's not.
Burrow, but
It's
close
the
enough.
best Pro Bowl.
But yeah, I'm a huge fan of these hires for the Patriots. I think the sky's the limit for us. And as I said in the video, temper expectations, expect 5 wins, be excited when it's 10, but don't expect 10 or you're going to be disappointed. So that's where I'm at. I'm excited to be a Patriots fan heading into the draft, 4th overall pick. We're going to get some studs there and hopefully have a better season next year.
Yeah. Moving across those northern states and staying in the division, we had Aaron Glenn, the Lions defensive coordinator, formerly, now being hired to be the Jets head coach. And, with the history between Aaron Glenn and the Jets franchise, drafted there, started scouting there, and, eventually got pulled over to Detroit by Dan Campbell. And after, I think they were in Saints together coaching, it definitely seems like this was a very no-brainer pick, kind of with the Vrabel situation of like former player, you know that they're a good leader and you've interacted with them as an organization before. So it really just seems like a continuity thing with Aaron Glenn coming in. And I think Aaron Glenn, we said we had our big Lions video kind of popped off for us, but we had a big Lions video where we talked about Aaron Glenn and his defense year over year over year. And he had a pretty similar defense year over year over year, and he just added talent to it and it became a very good defense. And this year, with 18 players on IR, he managed to get guys prepared, ready in a week. Like, people are coming in off the street, off of practice squads, and they're ready to play on game day. So, while he hasn't made any offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator hires as of yet, and we don't know what the situation could be with Aaron Rodgers returning to the Jets or not. He did say that he's, reached out to Aaron and that Aaron reached out to Aaron and that there's conversations to be had with the new GM and, the 3 of them all together. So there's some big questions to be answered still, but I'm confident in him as a leader. And with the talented roster the Jets have had, just shy of a quarterback for the past 4 years, it feels like. I think he'll definitely make the Jets defense play better than how terrible they were when Ulbrich was the interim. So I think, they're sticking with the defensive head coach, which I didn't expect from them. When Aaron Glenn was a name, I was like, I think they might be going offensive because they have this distrust now for the defensive interim and the defensive head coach. But, they're leaning hard into defense. So I'm looking forward to seeing the hires he brings in. But end of the day, I don't imagine a lot's going to happen year 1, depending on, okay, is Aaron coming back? If he is, will he be good? Or if he's not coming back, is it Jordan Travis season? Is it trade up? Like, a lot of questions to be had for a GM. So, great talented roster, but you're missing at the biggest position. So I think with the first year, it's not going to be like, oh, we're going to explode onto the scene under Aaron Glenn. It'll be, as we said, like, he's going to add talent those year over year over year, and then eventually he's going to be at the top. So that's what I would look for from the Jets moving forward here.
Yeah. Then we get into the Raiders, who hired Pete Carroll as their head coach. This was a really interesting decision. Tom Brady kind of influenced the Raiders to fire their GM, who had brought in a lot of talent. I think that was a really poor decision to get rid of him. But ultimately, they brought in Pete Carroll, who I think is a good head coach. He just didn't work out in Seattle. And I'm curious to see what the team looks like next year. I think it's going to look very different from the Antonio Pierce led squad. And I really like our first mock draft. We had Genty going to the Raiders. I really like that pick for Pete Carroll specifically. That was made obviously before Carroll was hired. And after he was hired, I was like, oh, it fits so much better now, where not only does it give them an identity, it gives them an identity that we know their head coach likes
Yeah.
because he had Marshawn Lynch, and Genty is the same kind of runner where he's going to run through your face and he's also going to bounce off you and keep running. And if they can get him in at 6, if they can pull the trigger on that, I think they've got a brighter future than many might think. And the other thing that I gotta imagine there's some amount of excitement inside the building is Pete Carroll is not a young guy. He's not going to be there for 10 years. He's going to be there for 3, if that. He signed a 3-year deal. I don't really see him coaching past that. I think he's probably going to do his best to get them back to competing and then hand the reins off to some hotshot offensive coordinator that they've got, if that's in the cards. I would be curious to see if the Raiders kind of make a push to get Russ from Pittsburgh to come to the Raiders. I think that could be a very interesting pairing, getting Russ back with Pete Carroll and giving the Raiders an answer at quarterback so that they can kind of recreate the Titans with a maybe a little bit washed up older quarterback like the Titans had in Tannehill, and then
a strong
downhill runner.
back
Yeah.
with possible Genty as we had mocked it. Yeah. And, good.
I just think it's adding up so well in my head, and I'm going to be so disappointed when it doesn't happen and when Genty makes it to the Cowboys and they take him.
It is what it is. We can only mock. We can only pretend to live in this, fantasy world that we love so much. But, I do like the Pete Carroll hire because it was a very interesting, resignation, step down, fire, maybe, situation that happened with Pete Carroll at the end of his time with the Seahawks, moved into the front office, apparently didn't want to. Now he's on a different team coaching, so I feel like, that was probably a little bit feasible of a story.
To depart.
But, yeah. Then, moving on, we've got the Liam Cohen, the Jaguars. I'm not going to do it. You thought I would do it.
Dude,
put it in the doc.
Val?
Yeah, and the eyebrows, dude. The eyebrows was the worst part for me. The Duval, okay, you're not The Rock. Don't try to pull it. All right, Liam Cohen. He is yet another Bucs offensive coordinator that is now being turned into a head coach. And you touched on it with the whole defensive minded head coach. Offensive coordinators get poached. Certainly been happening a lot to Tampa Bay, but with Liam Cohen, performed well with Baker. He goes ahead, he gets himself a head coaching gig, and he's going to have Trevor Lawrence to have a quarterback. And he's worked with quarterbacks most of his career, been a quarterbacks coach. He worked under Sean McVay when he first broke onto the scene in the NFL, and worked with Jared Goff for a little bit. Oddly enough, goes and coaches offensive coordinator for Kentucky, and then he comes back to the league for the Rams, and then he goes to the Bucs. He's jumped around a little bit. Then I think he went from the Bucs to the Kentucky and then back to the Bucs. I don't really know the straight order of it all, but he's gotten around. But basically, with anybody that's under Sean McVay, you can trust that he's going to be a solid offensive leader because he obviously just did it with the Bucs, turned around their entire run game entirely from where they had been in the past. And then, you've got them going so strong. He goes and he's like, I actually don't want this job. Trent Baalke's here. I don't think I want this job. I'll stick with what I've got. And then the Bucs are like, oh yeah, here's a huge extension. Do you want to come sign it? And he's like, click, and goes right back to Jacksonville after Trent Baalke's fired. Just such a whirlwind of things happening for the Bucs, I'm sure, to basically be ghosted by a guy who just coached for you the entire year. And then, you've got now in-state, I guess, in-state rivals. They're not really affiliated at all. they don't play each other that much. But in-state rivalry, I guess you could call it, with him going and coaching a different Florida team. It'll be interesting to see what he can do with this, roster that isn't so great at running the ball, but has had a good running back. We'll see if they keep ETN around. Maybe he wants to use ETN. Maybe he wants to get some new guy in there.
Bixby.
But he could probably turn around their running game as well.
Yeah. It's either going to work out really well or it's going to crash and burn, and it's going to be like the worst decision anyone's ever made.
Duval?
And the Duval, that I just feel like that, combined with the way that he left Tampa, it makes me really want to see him fail. Like, I don't want to see anybody fail. I want everybody to succeed. I want the product put on the field to be the best possible product. So give me the best possible coaches for every position. Do it. But if he fails, it will be the funniest saga and funniest series of events ever.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the last head coach that is official is Brian Schottenheimer, the Cowboys offensive coordinator that they promoted to head coach. And it's just the most Cowboys move ever. And the way Jerry's talking about it, like, I always take risks. This is such a risk I'm taking here to hire this guy. And it's like, Jerry, give the team away. Give it away. You don't need to be here anymore. You're not doing a good job as GM. You're not making good decisions with the coaching. You're not making good decisions with the personnel. You're not making good decisions in the draft. You're not making good decisions at all about the team. You're not making good decisions in interviews. You're not making good decisions with the press. You're not doing anything right. But at least it's entertaining. But at least it's entertaining because, the people who are Cowboys fans, they're going to drink their problems away anyways, and the other people get to enjoy watching it go down. So, in other news, Matt Eberflus was hired as the Cowboys defensive coordinator, and that was probably a good move. They're probably going to have a pretty good defense. Micah Parsons, DPOY caliber player again, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes from there. And then, do you want to talk about the Saints job opening?
Yeah, I mean, the Saints, they still have a head coaching opening, as you said. They don't have a head coach yet. They don't have anything in place really after the Dennis Allen firing. So it could be that they're really waiting for, some coordinators who are playing in the big game to be available, whether it be Fangio, whether it be Kellen Moore, who's more likely because he's actually been Matt Nagy, bring him back to the head coaching limelight. Kellen Moore seems to be the one. I'm pretty sure just today they finished up an in-person interview with him, so it very well could just be, okay, I can't announce that I'm going to leave the team until after the Super Bowl, so we'll learn about this in 2 weeks, but for now, it'll be up in the air. Unless they just go crazy and just get somebody out of left field. Rizzy. And, they stick with their guns with their guy, or they just get somebody out of college out of nowhere and say, Kellen Moore, we didn't want to wait around for you. They're really, with the Saints, it's an interesting job to take. So for Kellen Moore, it wouldn't be the easiest chance really to go ahead and get, and it'd be interesting for him to have had all of these interviews he's done, and because he's the last to be officially available, he's then the last to go to the worst place. Which you could argue a lot of these are the worst places, but a pretty bad spot to go to talent-wise. Then with that, I think we can wrap up all of the head coaching openings and or closes, hirings. But we do have a little bit of a coordinator roundups because, coordinators, we talked about the ones that were head coaches. The head coaches are often coordinators that are now making vacancies, so just going to kind of speed through some of these. And get to who's moving where and what's been going on there. So if you want to just take a handful, and I'll take a handful as well.
Yeah, so we saw Robert Saleh head back to San Francisco, be their defensive coordinator. I really liked him in San Francisco, so I think this move is good. I think he'll get the most out of that defense, and we may see a bit of a return to form after a pretty lackluster year from the 49ers. Then we got Clay Kubiak to be the 49ers offensive coordinator and Clint Kubiak to be the Seahawks offensive coordinator. Remind me again where they were before, please.
So Clint was the one that was the Saints offensive coordinator, who was, the big thing. And then I'm pretty sure that Clay was in San Fran, but he was like a quality offensive assistant, kind of
Okay.
pseudo role, not coaching a position or anything, just one of those kind of assistant roles that was helping out. So he got promoted from in-house, and then Clint pulled from Saints over to Seattle.
Gotcha.
And then with John Morton, which was announced officially today, with Detroit's new offensive coordinator, was the Broncos
Passing game coordinator.
passing game coordinator. Again, one of those pseudo roles. But there's ups and downs with that, and I'm sure I'll have to think more about it because we notoriously have not been huge fans of Sean Payton and how he did it. But Bo Nix, he acclimated to the league quickly, so I think there's a little bit of a good news there that John Morton led a successful passing offense with a rookie, and pretty you don't have great chemistry with your quarterback and your wide receivers at that point. So good things there. And then also in Detroit, Kelvin Shepard was promoted from within, linebackers coach, up to defensive coordinator. I really like that move. Shepard has been talked very openly about how much he likes Dan Campbell and how much he's really put trust in him and how Dan Campbell empowers the staff. So I think, with Kelvin Shepard, he's spoken to the team a lot as if he was a head coach, leading team meetings and leading everything. So putting him in defensive coordinator, he's already been bona fide leader for the team. He was featured kind of heavily in Hard Knocks when it was, happening that first year with Detroit. So I'm very happy with this as the pick for Detroit for defensive coordinator.
Yeah. Then we've got the Falcons hiring Jeff Ulbrich to be their defensive coordinator. He was the interim head coach for the Jets, and I'm curious to see how he does there because, like we were talking about, when he became the head coach, the defense kind of fell off a cliff, and we weren't sure if that was due to Robert Saleh departing, which that was the most likely option, or if it was Ulbrich being a little bit less hands-on. So it will... we'll figure that out when we see how the Falcons defense is versus how the 49ers defense is and which one improves more. And maybe both of them will. Maybe both of them are really good defensive minds, just neither of them great leaders of men. But as you all know, if you've watched, we don't agree with the firing of Robert Saleh. But any whoosies. Then Cincinnati's new defensive coordinator, Al Golden, he was Notre Dame's defensive coordinator before that. And he is being pulled up from college, which is always interesting. Obviously, national championship game, he was in it, lost, but was in it. So that's always a big stage to see some coaching talent. And then if you want to get into the Texans offensive coordinator search, because that is still ongoing after they fired Bobby Slowick.
Yep. So they, as you said, they did fire their former. It's not like he got poached anywhere else. They just straight up fired him. They made the opening, and then with the coordinator spot, currently there's been 3 in-person interviews that that I've seen around, and that would be Gerard Johnson, who's their current quarterbacks coach, Thad Lewis, who is the Bucks quarterback coach, and then Jeff Nixon, the Syracuse OC, and I believe that what's the guy's name? Chip Kelly was also rumored heavily to be in big interest in this job. Yet to interview, so no official word on interviews there, but pretty wide open. They're kind of clearly they have a little bit of the preference for the quarterbacks coach thing, whether it be Texans quarterback. Okay, he's worked with C.J. Stroud, or the Bucks one. He's worked with Baker, and Baker's had great few years with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then you're going into college for a couple of these candidates. It's unsure where they'll land, just kind of like those Saints where, very up in the air, where there might be a favorite, but we're not super keen on what they might decide in the next coming weeks. With the Texans OC, I could see it be like, oh, we want a quarterbacks coach that is more verifiable, but then you bring one from out of state and you're kind of going over the head of your current quarterbacks coach. Could be a little bit of a thing there, a little bit of office politics there, if you will. But it'll be interesting to see the decision made here because they did have the year they had, and CJ had the rookie year he had. They very much outperformed what they thought anyone prior to the draft would have had them do, and yet they really fell off a cliff this year. I would lean to them kind of going with their current quarterbacks coach and keeps continuity, but it really just depends how much trust they have in their current quarterbacks coach.
Yeah, something just of note on the Syracuse offensive coordinator, just a bit of connection to the Texans. So Syracuse's quarterback this year is Kyle McCord, who was Ohio State's quarterback right before. So he transferred out of Ohio State this past season, and he was backing up, Kyle McCord was backing up CJ Stroud. So there's a bit of connection there between Stroud, McCord, and Jeff Nixon, who's Syracuse's offensive coordinator. And Kyle McCord had a hell of a season at Syracuse. It just kind of wasn't a national stage as it was Syracuse instead of Ohio State that he had the great season at. So bit of interest there. I would be curious to see if he's got more of a possibility of being the coordinator there just based on that, or if they promote their quarterback's coach and bring in Jeff Nixon as their replacement for him, if that would be a path that they would go.
Yeah. And then the last one we've got here is the Cleveland Browns. They promoted Tommy Rees to offensive coordinator, was their pass game coordinator, like many of these, coordinator hires have been. With this, it's just kind of rough. You don't know how good the pass game coordinator is because you've had Deshaun Watson being the leader of the passing game. So the Browns really just as an organization are really in this gray area for the next couple of years while Deshaun Watson's hurt, while they're still paying him. We'll see what happens, but it's not a whole lot to put it stock into, like, oh, they got this new offensive coordinator, he's going to do these many things and it's going to really turn everything around, because he's still from that organization. He's not a new face, he's not a new name, he's not going to revolutionize their offense. I think if anything, this would just be a move away from the Nick Chubb era where everyone's rooting for the Browns. They got a great run game, good offensive line, and now moving more into like, okay, we need to develop an actual passing attack that is utilizing Deshaun Watson, because we've yet to do that effectively. I think that's kind of their plan with that.
Yeah. So definitely let us know down in the comments below what you think the Saints should do at head coach, and if you think any of these hires were notably bad or notably good, if you think anybody just aced the head coaching cycle or the coaching cycle. But if you are here just for the segment video, we appreciate you watching. As always, tune in for the full podcast releasing tomorrow, 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern.